Welcome to BlackScreenStories. My name is Austin. If you know me, you know I recently quit my job, and I'll be starting the new one Monday. That's pretty fun. For the past 3 years, well, almost 3 years actually, for the past almost 3 years, I was employed with one of the most well-known package handling company ever. You may know them for their specific color, and their motto of, what can this specific color do for you? And the only reason why I ever got a job there was because once I got out of college, I had an engineering degree. And I could not find anything that was hiring. Everyone's all like, oh, well, you need experience. It's like, do I really need experience for this? It's an entry level position. Why do you require 3 years experience? Also, why do I need to give you my resume and then fill in boxes that has all the information on my resume? That's incredibly ridiculous and needs to stop. You have my resume, look at the resume, problem solved. Anyway, after a few times just trying to find a job, eventually I got a call back and they're like, hey, why don't you just try to get warehouse experience before you can actually be an engineer? I'm like, okay, whatever. So I applied to two of the most major package handling companies in the United States and also international. And one, they're like, oh, well, you will only work maybe 2 to 3 hours a day, possibly 3 days a week. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And the other one was 5 days a week for at least 3.5 hours because it's only part time and also at early o'clock. Well, both were at early o'clock. Both were at early o'clock in the morning, so it doesn't matter. I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to do this one because it gets more hours. Plus, they said if I work the entire week, I get an extra $100, which is crazy that I'm getting paid extra just to show up. This was 3 years ago, mind you. It's not like the current day and age where no one's working because unemployment's giving you way more than it should. So I go on to the tour about a week after I talked with HR. They're like, oh, we'll come back. I think it was like a Monday or Wednesday. You'll do a tour. I'm like, okay. So I go on the tour, and they're showing us around the facility. Like, oh, here's where the people unload the packages from the trailers. Here's where they load them into other trailers or into the different box cars, which we call package cars. You know, like the box trucks. We call them package cars. Here's different belt tenders for all the conveyors and stuff. And then near the end, they mentioned, oh, and by the way, we have an engineering department who is looking for people right now. So if you have an engineering degree, look for that. And I go, ooh, I need to remember that. So at the end of the tour, I go to the guy and go, hey, you mentioned something about engineering department. I have a degree. What do we do about that? He then takes me to the engineering department's manager. He's like, hey, this guy has a degree. I go, hello. It's like, cool, send me your resume and we'll set up an interview. But that following week, I go and interview with him and the supervisor. It's not his supervisor. It goes supervisor and then him. So technically the person that's just under him. And they interview me, ask me a bunch of questions, and I get the job because apparently I was the only one who applied. And then the next week, they call me up, they're like, hey, you have to take this test. I go, okay. So take a test. That's basically just like, hey, would you punch your coworker in the face? I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Cool. You're hired. Okay. So you get a job, and I'm working at early o'clock in the morning, part-time. All because that spot was open because a kid left. He was there since the building opened, which was only a year prior. And the way he left is he just came in one day, and at the end of his shift, he just erased his name from the board and left and didn't say anything, which is pretty funny. So that spot was open, so I got hired. And while getting trained, I was getting trained by a person who was a step above me. And after 3 weeks, he leaves. So my 4th week there, that Friday, they're like, hey, Austin, do you want to be promoted to full-time? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Full-time's the whole point of this thing. Okay. So after 4 full weeks, I was already promoted. I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. I was then considered a specialist instead of just a part-time supervisor. Which, because it goes part-time soup, specialist, full-time soup, manager, region, district, whatever. It just keeps going up. And the whole time, they're like, hey, your supervisor is going to show you how to do his job for whenever he leaves, you can take over. That was always the plan, is teach the people below you what you do, which no one ever did. At no point during my job was I teaching the people below me how to do my job. I was always teaching them how to do their job. The supervisor really didn't teach me how to do his job, but after watching him, I go, ooh, I do not want that job. So at that point, legit, less than 6 months in, I'm already thinking, this is not going to be my forever job. Honestly, the catalyst. So I already didn't want to keep moving up, which is fine. Even though my manager kept saying, hey, there's works to get you promoted to supervisor. I'm like, okay, well, at least more money. Granted, it's more hours in your salary, but hey, more money. And then about the next week, actually, our current supervisor, who is different from the one who hired me, he leaves. He goes back to a department that he was part of like a few years ago. Well, actually like a year ago. So we need new supervisors. And I'm thinking, okay, it's probably going to be me, since how the week prior, my manager was already saying how he wants to put me as a supervisor role. So it's most likely me, which is unfortunate because I kind of don't want to be supervisor right now because that's a lot of extra responsibility. And you're on call 24/7. However, my coworker, who was also special time, so we're technically equal, he was the one who got promoted. So then I took over his responsibilities, and a different person took over my responsibilities. And his responsibilities was essentially being on call 24/7. So talking with our administrator, which is kind of like a secretary, but that's unpolite to say that. And we're joking around. She's like, "Oh, well, how do you feel about, taking over all this new stuff?" And I'm joking like, well, they're going to call me at 3 a.m. and I'm just going to ignore their calls. And we both laugh at it. Clearly a joke. Like, it's obviously, I am kidding about saying that I'm not going to answer the phone. It's like, oh, well, maybe I will answer and just say, don't bother me. Call the person who previously had this position. We'll call him Jay. It's like, oh, call Jay. Don't bother me. Ha 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 ha. Both laughing, having a good time. Manager walks in like as I'm about to do a walk of the building. And I don't even get 20 yards away from the office. And he leaves. I was like, "Hey, Austin." I'm like, "Oh, jeez, what? What do you want?" He's like, "Hey, so you're saying how you're not going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. if someone calls you?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, well, you were saying how you're..." I'm like, "Are you seriously believe me?" First of all, why is our administrator telling you this when it was clearly a joke? And third of all, why do you believe that? Dude, I've worked for you almost 3 years. Do you really believe that I'm going to look at the phone and go, "Oh, that's an emergency. I'm not going to deal with that because I'm tired"? No. How dare you? I thought you trusted me for these past 3 years. You constantly praise me for all the stuff I do. But then you go and think that I'm actually not going to answer the phone? How dare you? And that was on a Monday. Legit, that day, I come home, get on Indeed, and apply to like 15 positions. Well, also like the part of my shift, I was just going through Indeed and saving the job, so when I come home, I can apply to them. And funny enough, one of those positions that I applied for that day, like a month later or so, they reach out to me like, "Hey, come to Indianapolis and do an interview." I'm like, okay. And it works out perfectly because they want to do it on a Thursday, which that week I was scheduled off from work. Only because for the company I work for, they want you to pick all your vacation days like the November before the year. It's like, "Oh, hey, it's almost Thanksgiving. Make sure you pick all your vacation for next week." So I just picked this random week in August. Just random. Which is perfect, because then it's like, oh, I can do this interview and not have to worry about taking a day off of work. So go down and do the interview, and the whole time they're like, "This is what your job's going to consist of." I'm like, "Cool, I already do that." "Well, what about all these things you have to do?" "I do that too." "You're going to have to do this?" "Yes, I am doing that." But, yes, basically everything you're asking me to do, I do. I just need to learn your guys' new system, and then I'll be able to hopefully seamlessly move in. About a week and a half later, I get a call from the guy who I interview with, well, one of the guys I interview with, and he goes, "Hey, we're giving you a soft, an unofficial offer, but you'll probably get the official offer next week or so." I go, "Cool, that sounds great." And I was very happy. And then eventually I get the official offer, and I go, "All right, my start date is literally in 2 weeks. I have to put in my 2 weeks today because it's Friday." Alrighty then. And right before I leave, I already had my resignation letter ready for this moment, and I hand it to my supervisor, I go, "Hey, I'm just letting you know I'm putting my 2 weeks notice." And he kind of goes, "Okay, yep, all right." So I grab my stuff and I leave for the day. And on the way home, my manager calls and goes, "Hey, you put in your 2 weeks?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." "Well, why?" "Well, I'm not using my degree, and driving an hour to work every day and home kind of sucks." And he's all like, "Oh, we'll do all we can. Well, why don't we do this and this?" I'm like, "Dude, you've been promising me these things since I started. The past 3 years, you've been promising me stuff that hasn't happened. So I'm sorry that I don't believe you when you say, 'Oh, we can put you in these positions,' because clearly you haven't. So I'm leaving." And 4 hours later, then my supervisor calls me and goes, "Hey, I just read your letter. You're actually leaving?" I'm like, yeah, what do you think I meant when I said I put in my 2 weeks? He goes, oh, I thought you were joking. No. Also, if you just now read the letter, why did my manager call me? Who told him? I don't know. So Friday was my last day, which is pretty nice. And now Monday I can start my new job in a new field with a new company. I'm really looking forward to it. If you enjoyed this video, I'll see you next time.